What's up, Bucs Squad? I'm your host, Jaron. I'm going to tell you the one move Tampa Bay needs to make to become Super Bowl contenders.
Buck Squad, what up? Marcus Ray, and I'm going to tell you which NFL draft sleepers I think can help the Bucs.
And I'm Ryan Lavoie, and I'm going to tell you why the real value of the NFL draft will be had beyond round number one.
Hey, Tampa Bay, it's the Buccaneers squad. Everything Tampa Bay Buccaneers every week. Breaking down all the big hits and game-changing plays from the heart of the Sunshine State, the way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. With a touch of the Buccaneer way, the Buccaneer Squad Show starts now.
All right, Bucs Squad, like I said, I'm your host, Jaron, joined by Marcus and Ryan. We've got a packed show for you today. We're going to talk about the one move Tampa Bay needs to make to become Super Bowl contenders. And then we're going to give an update on Jamel Dean. Is he gone? Well, the Bucs kind of got a bad report here recently. Then we're going to talk about some NFL draft sleepers who we think could really help Tampa Bay out. Before we wrap up with our Around the NFL segment, this time we're going to talk about quarterback carousel, as there's been a lot of rumors involving a lot of quarterbacks already this offseason. But as far as the one move that can make Super Bowl contenders, Sports Illustrated put out a really good article about it. And they talked about several things. Obviously, the big one is Max Crosby. We've talked about that, where we do think if you get someone, a dynamic pass rusher like him, then it immediately increases your ceiling by a ton. And then they also put that they need to add some depth on the defensive line as well. And it's hard to argue that, because I said that on Monday's podcast, that I felt like if you get Max Crosby, you're a Super Bowl contender. Does that mean you're going to win? No. I mean, things got to go your way. You got to have some luck involved and things like that. But I really do believe that based off of what Todd Bowles likes to do, what his defenses like to do, if you can get a guy that can get after the passer like Max Crosby can, that's the move. That's the big one. Now, it obviously will depend what you have to give up, and mostly it's draft capital for these kind of players. But with that being said, I still think that's the big one. That's the one I'm circling.
So look, sack the other team's quarterback, protect yours, right? And certainly the Bucs, while they had some injuries on the offensive line, they know that the most important offensive line position at left tackle is Tristan Wirfs, and it's going to be Tristan Wirfs until he hangs up his cleats. So on the defensive side of the ball, that has been the big need. That's what we've been screaming for. The Bucs again tried to address that last year with Hassan Reddick on a value play, and they got no value in return for it. And that game-changing defensive pass rusher is the single most important thing they have to acquire this offseason. Now, there's other important things on the defense, linebacker just in general, a corner, as we talk about Jamel Dean later. But I think that if you're not being able to get consistent pressure on the passer, Todd Bowles' blitz schemes don't get as cool anymore, because you know that you have to blitz in order to get pressure on the quarterback. And the Bucs for the last couple seasons have had to blitz to get pressure on the opposing quarterback. So I do think that's Max Crosby. And we'll continue to evaluate in this show and the coming shows about the reasons why I think that the first-round pick for Tampa may be a little bit less valuable than on average, because of the way Jason Light drafts quality in the second, third, fourth rounds, probably better than he actually drafts in the first round. But I think that whether you're getting that premier pass rusher through free agency, which would be Trey Hendrickson, which would be very expensive, obviously, or Max Crosby, which would be expensive through draft capital, it's got to be someone that you can pencil in for double-digit sacks. Tampa has their number two. Yaya Diaby is a number two, but they have to acquire someone that is going to be able to be 10 to 12 sacks, period. And that will, again, I think that will unlock some of the blitz packaging again. That was, again, not as effective this season, because you knew that the only way Tampa was going to be able to sack the quarterback was with something creative. And other than Vita Vea taking up all the interior offensive linemen, there were no matchup issues for anyone. You didn't have to chip Yaya Diaby. You didn't have to chip Hassan Reddick or Anthony Nelson. Like you could do one-on-one, and heck, tight ends could block some of those guys from time to time. So you did not have to fear the edge of the Buccaneers defense. So priority number one, I personally lean towards Max Crosby. I would I would hear out the Trey Hendrickson argument. Is there someone that you are so certain of in the draft in the first round where Tampa would be? I don't like the trend of the mock drafts or some of the available candidates pushing the Bucs top candidates up a few spots ahead of them. So maybe they're available, maybe not. The surest way is to get this done pre-draft via free agency or trade.
I think Max Crosby's a good one. And I'll say this. I'm not sure if they're one move or one piece away from really being a Super Bowl team, contender. They didn't even make the playoffs. So I think there's a lot of areas that we can go. I'll give you two moves, one on offense, one on defense. I'm going to say Kyle Pitts. I think, and hear me out, like, well, K. Dotton's gone, whatever. Take the best tight end available and add him to this already explosive offense and just go Golden State Warriors. That's what you do. You go Golden State Warriors, meaning I got 5 shooters on the field. That means at any moment, any one of those guys can score, and you have the most explosive offense complete. You have the Zach Robinson effect where he coached Pitts the last 2 years. And as a matter of fact, Pitts, his upward climb from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 touchdowns, that's what he totaled last year. So, I mean, his climb and his evolution, I think, would make the Bucs offense completely unstoppable with a healthy offensive line and a Baker Mayfield and Zach Robinson. That way, your offense is the defense. If Todd Bowles and those guys aren't going to fix this defense or get the right pieces in there and not give up big plays and then his blitz packages are getting picked up and they're not going to stop the run, then just go 99 Rams. Just go ahead and outscore everybody, be the greatest show on turf, bring it back, and just outscore people. Because frankly, I don't know if the defense will be fixed. That's why they're making so many moves offensively. Now, that's my offensive pick. My real pick because I think that's a reach and a stretch, but I do think Kyle Pitts would be a game changer for them at that position, especially considering what he did to the Bucs himself. The other guy that I think on defense, I think you got to go with a guy named Lloyd, my man, the linebacker from Jacksonville, Devin Lloyd. I think at 27, he had a breakout year. He made a lot of big plays, and he was pretty much, in my opinion, the leader of that Jacksonville defense. He had 5 interceptions, including a 99-yard pick six. That's something that Servatier Dennis could not do. That tells me that if you keep Levante David for one more year, and then you take a guy like Lloyd, who is a playmaker at linebacker, I think you might have something there. He averaged 109 tackles in his first 4 years or whatever it is, 436 tackles. This man is a playmaker, and he's coming from some good stock from that Jacksonville defense. So I think if you add a big-time playmaker, free agent linebacker, now, will you be able to afford him because he's going to get into that 27-year-old second contract, $18 million kind of range? But I mean, Jacksonville may re-sign him. That's not a guy that they want to lose. They obviously retained both of their coordinators, and Cohen did a great job with that group this year. But I think if you get a playmaking linebacker and you find a way to solidify Jamel Dean's situation or find a replacement for him, a couple guys I kind of like in that department too. I'm just not sure how much money Jason Licht wants to spend in free agency. But I think if you get Lloyd, then you don't have to spend your first round draft pick on a linebacker.
Yeah, and that's a good point too. And then going back to your Kyle Pitts point, obviously we've talked about the issues of him maybe not being a great blocker, and if you have issues on the offensive line, that could be a problem. But to Marcus's point, if they don't go all in on getting defensive guys, you might as well go all in on the offense and say, we're just going to outscore you, because that's going to be your best chance to win if you don't go get a Max Crosby, or like Ryan talked about, where a lot of these mock drafts aren't projecting well for you at where you're at. And so if those kind of trends continue, it would not be a bad idea to go with all in on offense. But I do want to ask you this, Marcus. I meant to ask you this when we first talked about Max Crosby maybe a week ago. Talk about that as a defensive back, because we've talked about the defensive backs. Obviously, they're young. Several of them are young at the corner position, and they kind of struggled in coverage. But talk about what it does for you having a guy that's that elite at rushing the passer?
Well, first of all, defensive backs, normally they play off of each other as a group, just from the back end perspective. Once the communication is there and all those guys are on the same page, when you know that you have an unblockable guy up front who can make the ball come out quick, or he can disrupt pass protection schemes, he'll also free up everyone else. Those defensive ends, like a Max Crosby, they make everyone's lives easier and they make the guys around them better. So when I was in college and we had an All-American at defensive end, but we had pros all over the field, but we knew both of our defensive ends played in the NFL, but that ball had to come out. The other thing that it does, it allows you to get pressure without blitzing. That's why I think Todd Bowles got a little insecure with his blitz packages and probably showed his hand, because he knew he didn't have that. He knew he couldn't rush forward like Seattle. See, like Super Bowl championship great defenses, they can do both. They got after Drake May when they needed to, but they also could rush forward and play coverage. So to answer your question, in summary, as a defensive back, you dream of having a defensive lineman or two that can wreak havoc, get to a quarterback, allow you to sit back there and roam. If I'm a free safety, I'm like, oh, this is great. If I'm a corner, the ball's coming out quick. If I'm a nickel back, I'm already in the box and I'm playing underneath, jumping hitches and slants when that ball, because then you don't want to drop back pass whenever you have a guy like Max Crosby coming. You actually have to get the ball out quicker. So that's when you see, that's what I mean by quick game, slants, hitches, and outs. Also, in the run game, when you have a guy that's that thorough, it takes the running back out of the passing route too. Now they have to keep more guys in to try to double team. So now it's less guys to cover. So I think those are the benefits of having like a guy like Max Crosby.
Yeah, and again, I think that what you were talking about again is with the ability to be more creative on defense and not rely solely on that creativity, because again, as you said, the ability to rush for and get pressure on the passer might be the single most important or most valuable thing a defense can do, because it allows you to do anything you want. If you want to play a bunch of zone, you can. I always felt when Brady was in Tampa, and I didn't study as closely in New England, although we all saw him for many years, I felt that the reason that he struggled with New Orleans a lot, because, and heck, the Bucs offense for years has struggled New Orleans. Even if you go back to the Winston days when he's chucking for 300, 3 touchdowns and 3 interceptions against everybody, his numbers were often lowest against New Orleans. And the reason is, especially when Brady was in Tampa, was that they ran a lot of two-man. And what two-man does is it only rushes 4. It's man coverage across the board, and you still have 2 safeties to be able to help in zone coverage and to go wherever they need to across the field. And it was the Saints' ability to get pressure, meaningful pressure on Brady with just rushing 4 and be able to play man coverage and be able to have safety help, that really made it very difficult. I mean, just it was the worst Brady offenses for Tampa were against the Saints. I mean, with the exception of the playoff game, I mean, they had a 3-point game against him. They had a game where they had 3 points for 50 minutes and then went and scored 2 quick times at the end to save it in that 2022 season. I mean, they had some really rough offensive performances against them. So again, to go back to the original point is, when you have a pass rusher that commands respect from not just one body, but 2 bodies at least on the other side of the ball, again, that's one of the most valuable things you can have in football. And it's certainly, I think, in my opinion, the most valuable thing you can have on defense, because as you saw, you can have great receivers. You can have explosive playmakers. You can have a great quarterback. But if he doesn't have time, he can't do anything. I mean, your entire operation is changed and hindered because of pass rusher. So that's the most important thing. The Bucs have to find out this offseason a way to get more pressure. And again, I don't think it's just schematics. I think it's personnel and a truly big upgrade of personnel.
And to your point, I'm sure a lot of Bucs fans have tried to put it out of their memory, but I can't remember if it was a Thursday, Sunday, or Monday night game, that 2020 year when they lost 38-3 to the
I was
Saints.
at that game.
Yeah, and that was, Brady throws 3 interceptions, no touchdowns, 209 yards. He's only sacked 3 times, but has a QBR of 4 and a quarterback rating of 40, and that was just one of the most dominant performances. And that's why a lot of people thought the Saints would beat them in the postseason, and obviously Bucs went on to win the Super Bowl, but it was all because of that pressure they were able to get after them. And even though they didn't get home a ton because Brady was very smart about getting it out quick, they forced turnovers. They forced a lot of stuff by doing that. But all right, coming up next, is Jamel Dean headed out the door? We'll talk about that. Don't go anywhere. Well, if you've ever hired someone who looked good on paper but wasn't the right fit, you know how important that is. When you want candidates who truly match what you're looking for, trust Indeed sponsored jobs. Hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs put your post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. If I needed to hire someone for this show, I'd go straight to Indeed and be very specific about what I need. Real experience, not just a resume buzzword. Instead of struggling to get your job post seen, Indeed sponsored jobs helps your listing stand out and reach quality candidates faster. Sponsored jobs boost your post to the people who are the best match for your role, and that makes a real difference. Spend more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with less stress, less time, and more results using Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of the show get a $75 sponsored job credit to help give your job the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. Just go to Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL right now and support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, do it the right way with Indeed. All right, Bucs Squad, we're back with another segment of the Bucs Squad Show. Just a reminder, this is extra content we do every Monday and Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Doesn't take anything away from what James does. He does a great job. Hopefully he's feeling better. He said he was a little under the weather, so hopefully he's doing better. But, all right, let's talk about Jamel Dean. Obviously, he was a guy that we kind of thought was probably going to be gone. He took a pay cut to stay with Tampa, but at this point, I don't know if they were going to be in the same ballpark. And Pro Football Focus said that Jamel Dean is projected to make $55 million over a 3-year contract. That would put him as the highest paid free agent at the cornerback position during free agency. So of the free agents, he would be the highest paid one, not the highest paid corner overall. But yeah, I mean, if that's the contract that he's getting offered and he wants to take, now obviously we don't know what his intentions are. Maybe he takes another cheap deal and stays with Tampa, but likelihood is he'll take a bigger deal and go somewhere else. But, obviously he's been a key player for Tampa. He's been, when healthy, he was having a strong start to the season. Marcus talked about it many times, the start of the season that he had, and then he kind of injuries came back and kind of tailored off, and that's kind of been his history. But my biggest question is, what kind of loss is this? I don't know. I mean, obviously when he's healthy and he's playing well, he's a big piece, but they have the younger corners that they do like, that it's hard to evaluate them because of no pass rush that we just talked about in the last segment, but they also have their growing pains during the year. But yeah, I mean, that's my biggest question. Just how big of a loss is it?
So, Jaron, you said 3 for 53. Was that the projection from?
Yes.
For Jamel?
3-year for $55 million.
Okay.
Yep.
So, I mean, what you're looking at there, about $18 million a year, give or take. And, that's probably the ballpark for Mike Evans, if I had to guess. Again, we said the other show, Mike was 2 for 52 last time, 26 per. So he's going to take he's going to have a little bit less. He's up in age, and he had his worst season health-wise, everything-wise last year. But he'll still be well into the teens per year. I'm not saying it's a 1-to-1. I'm not saying it's an either-or. I do say that in the unfortunate situation that Mike walks, which, again, no one wants, then that would probably be pretty even money. It might put you back in on Jamel Dean. But here's the thing. I mean, Jamel already took a massive pay cut this past season. He whittled his contract down to like $4.5 million, something in that range. So probably in his mind and in his books, the Bucs would have to overpay by about $7 or $8 million on the total value of the contract to get it back to what he took off this year for them. So that's why it was always going to be difficult to find a way forward. Again, I commend Jamel doing that? Because do you know how many guys are willing to take half of their contract just to stay where they are for another year? I mean, less than half of his contract. So,
and a guy that's injury prone who might not get that big payday again.
sure, a real bet on himself, and he's going to win. And he had a heck of a season. So the question again you asked is how big of a loss it is. I mean, the cop out answers we'll see come October or November when Jacob Parrish and Benjamin Morrison are playing a ton of football. They've got Zion McCollum too, but those two guys are going to be asked to do a ton. Now, again, they're drafted the second and third round respectively, and there is going to be a lot of expectation for them. Carlton Davis and Jamel Dean were second and third round picks. Those guys were not first round picks, and they became really good starting corners for the Bucs for multiple seasons. So that is the range that Tampa has made this work before. The question is, are you willing to just kind of let them sink or swim and not acquire another veteran? Because again, it's kind of an either or. It's like, I think Jacob Parrish and Benjamin Morrison as your number 2 and 3 corners going into the year is completely fine. But for me, they might be asking them to step up to the number 1 or number 2. And does it make sense to pay for someone above them, a veteran that deserves to be a starter and it could almost be a number 1 corner in the league? Or does it make sense to go below them and get like a number 4, that doesn't make a lot of money and may or may not have anything left? And that's not very attractive either. So really, I think that they're in a bit of a no man's land, that they have to make a decision. Do they trust these guys already or not? Because if they don't, then spending some real money on a free agent corner is very much in the cards. If they do trust them, then it doesn't make sense to really spend much money there. So that's going to be an interesting decision. I don't know what Jason Licht's thinking. I can tell you that makes me a bit nervous, but also if you've looked at the Bucs history the last few seasons and you've looked at Jamel Dean and you've looked at Carlton Davis when they were the number 1 corners each of the last 3 or 4 years, depending on what year you're talking about, those guys were still pretty beat up. Like, those guys missed real amount of time. So I don't mean to say that 12 games down to 0 is nothing, but I do think that they would be able to find someone more durable if they wanted to go down that road. But they drafted these guys high enough up to think that they are expected to be starting corners in this league, and pretty good ones at that.
Yeah, I think the young guys aren't there yet, Parrish and Morrison, but I think they're very serviceable. We actually saw McCollum get took up top several times last year, where he really struggled. So this is a need area. So for me, earlier this year, we did a MVP, Jaron. Remember, we did an MVP show, and I actually picked this young man, Jamel Dean, as my team MVP this year. He had 46 tackles, 3 picks, like 9 pass breakups, a sack, 2 forced fumbles. I mean, he created a lot of havoc. And then he had a pick 6 as well. I mean, I thought he had a better year than Antoine Winfield did. So I know it's 2 different positions, but I think he's valuable. I mean, over a 7-year career, I mean, he's getting at that age now where he's 30. But I think in his time there, he's been very loyal. He took the pay cut, as you stated, Ryan. I mean, but he's been productive. He has 11 interceptions, and so I could see Tampa Bay trying to bring him back, but at the same time, they may feel like they can get another corner for less money, because I think Dean, if he's going to ask for that $18 million a year, I don't think the Bucs want to spend that kind of money on that position. So for me, it's a roll of the dice, and they're going to play chess with this move. And so at this point, I don't see Jamel coming back, because he's not going to ask for anything less than 18 from the Bucs. He's going to want his money just based on the fact he took the hit already. So a lot of times when guys take the hit or restructure their contracts and then they become a free agent, they're actually looking for something on the back end. It's like hey, scratch my back and I'll scratch yours. But in a league where there's no real loyalty other than, I'll see you later, the Bucs could say, hey, thanks for the turkey. You took an $8 million hit. Now let somebody else pay you 18, and then we'll find another corner like Nahshon Wright from the Bears. I mean, he helped himself. I mean, they can sign him. He was on a league minimum contract and barely had one interception and only 3 starts. And then he came out and made the Pro Bowl. 5 interceptions, 2 forced fumbles. Sounds like the same type of player as far as production. And so Chicago's over the cap, and so a guy like Wright could be asking for somewhere in 15 to 14 range or maybe around 16. So there are some other corners out there that you could sign and not, if you don't want to pay Jamel Dean that ticket.
Yeah, the big question with Jamel Dean is, like you mentioned, Marcus, he's almost 30 years old. A 3-year deal would put him 33 at the end of it. He's already showing injury problems. Do you make that financial investment? And as Ryan mentioned, if it's an either or, you obviously choose Mike. Now, hopefully it doesn't ever come to that, but that's who you would choose in that scenario. And so that's the tough question. Now, with that being said, it was reported earlier this week that strength and conditioning coach Anthony Paroli was no longer listed on the team's website. So that's speculation that he's been let go, although I haven't seen that confirmed anywhere. And a big complaint from a lot of fans has been the soft tissue injuries that a lot of the players are suffering. That's been their complaint towards him. And so I guess that goes back to you, Marcus, again. What role does a strength and conditioning coach play in that? Is that fair criticism from fans saying, hey, we're having all these issues and it's your fault? I mean, obviously some of it's just fluky stuff that happens, but does that fall on the feet of the strength and conditioning coach?
Well, there's always going to be a fall guy, and I'll tell you this. I think head coaches and quarterbacks get too much blame and too much praise. And then it's funny you asked me that because I think strength and conditioning coaches get the same type of too much praise and too much blame. It's not college football. At this point, when you're in the NFL, those guys are there not to make you bigger, stronger, and faster. They're there to make you more explosive. They're actually there to make sure that your body is being repaired and is strengthened and repaired, basically, to last 5 to 6 months out the year. I mean, that's what their job is. You have a training staff too, so they all kind of work together. So, and everybody's workout isn't the same. So in college, it used to be where we all go in there, we print out our sheet and we work out. But in the NFL, you'll see that Mike Evans' workout is probably a lot different than Yaya's because of just the physical movements that they make. Bucky's workout is probably more similar to Antoine Winfield. So it's like when you have the thing I think that hurt him, the strength coach that probably got fired, is it was too many injuries. It was too many soft tissue injuries. So somebody's got to take the blame for that. It's like same way Grizz lost his job. You had so many injuries, but you coached it well. But when everybody came back, we didn't get nothing out of you, Grizz. So somebody has to take the fall for that. And I just think in this case, those soft tissue issues, man, are they doing something wrong in that weight room? And I think when things go bad in the National Football League, heads are going to roll, regardless if it's his fault or not. He has to take the blame because it also looks like to the fans and to the ownership like you're making changes and doing something about it. The way they do things about things in the NFL is to make changes.
So would your guess be that it's wrong exercises that aren't strengthening those things, or is it doing too much, which is wearing you down and then leading to injury?
It could be either or it could be something where you're doing squats versus the leg press. Mm-hmm. You're doing machines instead of free weights. It could be something as simple as that, but not enough or too much is always a question. I think it depends on the person too, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have a advanced take like Marcus, having been in the weight room for a national champion program and an NFL locker room. But again, I can tell you that just I think if you evaluate the fan side of it, I think Marcus hit the nail on the head at the end there, where if you're making a change, then it appeases the fan base. And how much structurally does it change? I couldn't really tell you. That's not one of the things I'm able to analyze. I'm not in those locker rooms. I've not been in professional weight rooms, anything like that. But when fans don't understand something and they get mad about something and you change it to try to make it better, when they perceive whether fair or foul it's wrong, that's going to be a winning play in the moment. And so, again, I'm not going to be able to make any predictions whatsoever or tell you what the blame pie would look like if it's just each individual's bad luck. But, again, that's just a thing that you do, as Marcus said, that I think people can be like, oh, yeah, well, maybe that'll be better, and just be able to have a more optimistic look at it for the next season.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing. And also, like, Mike Evans is one of the guys that deals with those kind of injuries more than almost anyone. And he's one of the biggest advocates since Paroli got taken off the website and likely fired, talking about how thankful he was for him as a coach. So you never know. Some of it is fluky too. So you can't really ever tell. All right, coming up next, NFL draft sleepers. We've got a couple for you. We'll talk about that coming up next. Well, the winter games are officially here, and if you're anything like us, you're locking in for events you only get to see on the biggest stage every 4 years. That's why following the winter games on FanDuel just makes sense. From medal counts to individual events to finding your angle on the sports you care about most, FanDuel gives you more ways to stay connected to the action. The drama of curling matches that start slow and somehow get intense fast, speed skating races decided by inches, hockey games that feel different right from the opening face-off. Even niche events become must-watch when you're fully locked into the competition. FanDuel keeps the entire Olympic experience engaging from start to finish. The Winter Games are on, and there's no better way to follow than with FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game. All right, Bucs Squad, we're back for another segment of the Bucs Squad show. NFL draft is still a couple months away. Combine's coming up, and that's always fun for fans to kind of get by. But let's talk about some NFL draft sleepers. We've talked about the first round, second round guys that we were really high on, but every year those guys that slip to the 4th, 5th, 6th round, even 7th round that end up becoming really good pros. Bleacher Report put out an article, and their guy to kind of keep an eye on for Tampa was Jadarian Price, the other running back at Notre Dame, who's a really solid running back, ran for 1,692 yards in his career, 21 touchdowns on 6 yards per carry. He's obviously a guy that's very talented. There's two guys that I kind of have an eye on for kind of that backup quarterback role, because I don't really think Teddy Bridgewater will be back in Tampa next year. But Taylon Green, if you just want an athletic freak kind of project, because he has to refine some things in the passing game, would be a guy to take a flyer on. But he doesn't necessarily fit the kind of scheme that Tampa likes to run. The other one I really like is Sawyer Robertson from Baylor. I watched several of his games this year, and he was prolific as a passer. He threw for 3,681 yards and 31 touchdowns. He's another guy that if you want to take in that late 5th, 6th, 7th round, somewhere in there, I think wouldn't be a bad pick.
I agree with you. I got to talk to both those guys a little bit in Mobile. Very impressive guys. Saw them obviously play some elite competition this year. And, with Taylon Green in Arkansas, I mean, there's not a lot he was working with. I mean, he had a veteran offensive mind and Bobby Petrino, but certainly Arkansas struggled all season long. When I was thinking of some sleepers, I didn't really think about the quarterback position, although Tampa, it's down the priority list, but they're going to need a new backup quarterback. I don't think that what people saw out of Teddy Bridgewater in limited supply was I think it actually was very enlightening to tell you that his NFL career is over at this point. But, when I was thinking of some guys, I was trying to think of like 3rd, 4th round type guys that I think that has been really a key point for Jason Light in his draft process. And if you look at the numbers, and I'll talk more about this as we get closer to the draft, I think there's decent evidence to say that his hit rate is probably a little bit better in those middle rounds than in the first round. And I think that also is why you kind of go down the line of trading first round picks for Max Crosby is probably a good move for Tampa. But I think in the 3rd, 4th round type guys, you mentioned his teammate at Baylor, Sawyer Robertson. I think at tight end, Michael Trigg would be a very interesting tight end prospect. Big dude, very explosive, good pass catcher. Again, the Bucs might be in the market for replacing Cade Otton. They have drafted some tight ends in recent years in later rounds like Devin Culp and Payne Durham. So I think that moving up a couple other rounds, because those guys have been even later than third round, I think doing that a little bit earlier might give you a better chance this time at a more complete tight end. Even someone like Keith, who has done a good job as a blocker, but is not obviously a pass catcher, is kind of floated back and forth between a tight end or when they will use a fullback in some earlier versions of the offense. So I look at Michael Trigg as an interesting tight end prospect somewhere around the third round. We've talked about Jacob Rodriguez from Texas Tech before. His production is incredible. He was on the Heisman ballot. I think he finished 5th or 6th in Heisman voting. As a defender, to do that, you're doing something special. And I've seen him a lot in the 3rd or 4th round too, which surprises me. So I think that that's going to be another position of need for Tampa, no matter what they do. I mean, you can argue you should replace Servase Dennis, obviously, and then we'll see what happens with the retirement or return of Levante David. So I think Jacob Rodriguez would be another guy. And let me give you one pass rusher. We're really enamored with 1st and 2nd round type of guys. And, man, there's a lot of them I like. I mean, even someone in the early 2nd round like Akeem Mesidor, if you traded back to our show on Monday, if you trade back in the early 2nd round, Akeem Mesidor, the other side of the Ruben Bain tandem, was elite at Miami this year. But I'll give you a 3rd or 4th round type of guy, Harold Perkins, who got off to an incredible start at LSU as a freshman. I quite frankly thought they used him incorrectly his sophomore and junior season, and a ton of turmoil in LSU. I think he's got an incredible motor. I do wonder on a down-to-down basis if he gives you that 110%, just that bull-like mentality. But his high-end stuff is still very impressive. So would not be using an early round pick on him anymore, like we thought we were going to see after year number 1 at LSU. But I do think that he's somebody in the mid-rounds that still has the 1st or 2nd round type of talent. You just got to find it on a more consistent basis.
I'll give you guys a couple of names that I think could go probably like more 5th or 6th round sleepers. And they're not even in the top 150 right now, but I'm going to take you to the Mid-American Conference. And we're going to start with Western Michigan's Nadame Tucker. Now, I actually commentated 3 of their games, maybe 4 of Western Michigan's games. And he jumped out at me, I would say, the entire season. And I talked to a couple of pro scouts about him, and I talked to a couple of coaches on the Bucs staff about him. 14 sacks. I mean, this man got after the quarterback. He was relentless. He was a transfer from Houston. And, this was the only year of his career that he played a significant amount of snaps. But he graded out pretty high as far as his pass rushing grade. And, I mean, his win rate was pretty high. I mean, this man was a one-man wrecking crew for Western Michigan, and a big reason that defense was there. Obviously, we know their coordinator was extremely good too, so they knew how to use him. But he's a guy that I think somebody's going to land a pretty good football player. He doesn't have ideal size, and he can give you like a 3-4 linebacker off the edge kind of look, but when he gets after that quarterback, he's tough to block, he's athletic, and he's fast. Staying in the Mid-American Conference, I also like Central Michigan's pass rusher, Michael Heldman. He actually graded out pretty high too. He had 12 sacks, and he's getting after the quarterback, 36 hurries on 320 plus pass rushing snaps. And he also had a win rate that was pretty high too. Now, I don't know if these guys in the MAC just aren't very good, but the offensive lines, but these 2 pass rushers did extremely well. And Heldman, he ranked 2nd in the draft class among edge rushers with 200 pass rushing snaps. I mean, that's what he does. I mean, and so he's those guys like that, depending on what you do, since there's a need, when there's a true need in the NFL at a position, you'll see a 1st or 2nd round pick. But what they'll also do is grab another one just in case, like a sleeper dude or someone who might actually end up being better than the guy that went in the 1st or 2nd round, or a solid backup. So I can see the Bucs spending money in the first couple rounds on one of the top guys, but then when they get back to that 5th or 6th round, they're going to draft another edge rusher, and it's going to be a guy like Heldman or big game Dame Tucker.
I'm glad you brought up Harold Perkins, Ryan, because he was a guy that I had my eye on too. Because so early in his career, his first 2 seasons, he was kind of used like that hybrid linebacker, edge rusher kind of player, and he had 13 tackles for loss his first year, 13 tackles for loss his second year, 7.5 sacks, and then 5.5 sacks. Then they said, no, we're going to make you a traditional linebacker, and that was in the new Baker scheme that they ran. And of course, he tears his ACL his first year, but he only has 1.5 tackles for loss, no sack. He tears his ACL fourth game of the year. So last year he played every game, had 56 tackles, 8 tackles for loss, and 4 sacks. So his tackles for loss and his sacks went down. His even tackles went down because he had 72 and 75 his first 2 years. And so I think if you brought him in as kind of that hybrid and played him more to his strengths and let him get after the passer more. I mean, I was at the game when they played Oklahoma, and he never rushed the passer. And that's literally what he was so good at doing his first 2 years. Another one, if you want some position flexibility on the offensive line as a later round guy, I mentioned Oklahoma, Febechi Nwiwu. He played 144 snaps at center this year, 54 snaps at left guard, and 647 snaps at right guard. And he allowed no sacks or quarterback hits all season long. But he's a guy that's projected to go a little later on, 4th, 5th round. He's a guy that is more of a guard. And actually, they had to kind of train him how to play center throughout the year because they didn't have a backup center because of injuries. And then it just so happened, I think it was before the LSU game, and then in the playoff game, their starting center ends up getting an infection of some kind, can't play either game, so he gets thrown into the mix to play center and did a really good job playing center. So he's a guy that could play center or the 2 guard positions. So if you wanted some flexibility, kind of like how we talk about swing tackles, it would be a swing guard or swing center really is what it would be. That's another one you can keep an eye on.
It's too early to know exactly what they're going to have to do in terms of what did they acquire in free agency. Did they trade any of their picks away? Sure. Just what the pecking order will be. But, we do get enamored with the top couple of needs, right? With the edge rusher, with the linebacker. But, to your point, they're going to want to evaluate the interior offensive line because while I think Gedeke's really good, he had a rough injury season, obviously. They got nothing out of Malk because he got hurt in game 2 or game 3. Ben Bredesen, it was probably their weakest offensive lineman going into the season. And then Graham Barton did not have a great season. I would like to think part of it was, hey, they tried to start him at left tackle when Wirfs was gone. That's going to break the rhythm of the offensive line a little bit. But they could use some different dudes in the middle of that offensive line as backups because they sure played a lot this past year and to mixed results, to say the least. So I do think that in the later rounds, maybe as early as the 4th or 5th round, they will be needing to evaluate some interior offensive line stuff. And I think the good news for them is on that. That's not exactly a high priority position for the draft. That's not something you see taken a lot of in the 1st or 2nd round. So they may still have pretty good value, pretty high numbers on the board when it comes to some of those guys. I mean, I also think about, I mentioned tight end because they could go that route as a number 1 tight end if Cade Otton's not back. But also, again, I don't think that there's anything wrong. Now, again, depending on how the personnel situation looks, I don't think there's anything wrong with drafting a running back in the mid to late rounds either. Now, again, we'll see what they do in free agency, but we know Rachaad White's walking. That's abundantly clear. That's the most clear thing in the offseason. And so he's going to be gone. Sean Tucker being the last year of his rookie deal coming up. I mean, it depends. They could be going free agency for the number 2 back. They could be elevating Tucker. They could be drafting in the later rounds. Again, Bucky Irving was not an early round draft pick. So, they have some optionality with that too. Really, it would be easier to tell you the positions that make no sense because there's very few of those towards the late rounds. Because like we said, even with quarterback, there would be some definite value in taking a late round guy to be a backup there.
Yeah, and I was going to mention that too. I mean, and there's a lot of good running backs out there. I mean, you got Katron Allen at Penn State. He's a physical runner. You got Moss from A&M. I mean, there's some quality running backs that won't be taken early. And the other advantage of that is when you draft skill players late, in later rounds, you're looking for them to play a huge role on special teams. I mean, that's where they're going to make the team. But then, if you make the team, then you're 1-2 plays away from actually getting a few reps. But if they can get some quality special teams minutes out of a backup corner, backup running back that can be on that kickoff or that punt team or that punt return team, I mean, that'll service the Tampa Bay Bucs well too, especially with the new coach.
And another running back I really like is Mike Washington Jr. from Arkansas. Had over 1,000 yards, 6.4 yards per carry, 8 touchdowns. Mel Kiper has him, I believe, as the 9th ranked running back. And so that's another guy you could draft late. And as both you mentioned, running back isn't a high priority position anymore. You can get some really good ones later on. You mentioned Katron Allen. His teammate Nicholas Singleton is listed as one of the lower rounded running backs as well, who obviously has a ton of talent. All right, coming up next, we're going to go around the NFL, talk about some quarterback carousel. We'll do that next. All right, Bucs Squad, back for our final segment of the Bucs Squad show. So Bleacher Report put out its list of quarterbacks that they think could be on the move. That's J.J. McCarthy from the Minnesota Vikings. They think could be on the move. Kyler Murray could be on the move. Tua could be on the move. Russell Wilson's another one they listed as someone that could be on the move. For those that are curious, they have Kyler moving on to the Vikings. They have Tua actually headed to Atlanta. And then they have Malik Willis taking over in Miami. I guess the big question is because I think there is going to be quite a bit of moves this offseason because, Kyler and Tua are kind of in the same boat where they got the big contract because of some good seasons, but both teams are probably ready to move on into another direction. I think it's probably good for both quarterbacks to move on in another direction as well. And I think Kyler is actually a really good player still. I know he had his struggles and also the video game allegations and stuff like that. But I still think he's a really productive and good quarterback. Obviously had the injury that's hurt his career, but he didn't have a ton of talent always in Atlanta or in Arizona. And so Minnesota I actually think makes a ton of sense for him to go out there with a lot of really good weapons and get them back into contention like they were with Sam Darnold. But what's a quarterback for you guys that you kind of expect to be on the move, and where do you think they'll go?
So first, when you were mentioning the quarterbacks, and this could have been completely coincidental, I was watching Marcus, and his face looked more confused by each name and each destination you said. And I don't know if that was what he was reacting to or not. But, I do think it's easy first to evaluate the changes that need to be made, right? So sure. I do not see a path forward for Tua, although it's going to be a huge cap hit to move on from him. I think it's like $60 million or something of dead money to move on right now. But do you just find a way to put yourself in cap hell for a year and deal with it because that's just not the guy to lead your franchise anymore? I think the answer is probably yes. So I think the Tua situation, considering you fire the coach too, is one. I do think Arizona wants to get off of Kyler Murray. I think that became clear because I think Murray could have come back last year and they just kept playing Jacoby Brissett and they said, we're going to throw it 50 times and we're going to lose because somehow Jacoby Brissett's going to throw 50 times and throw 0 touchdown passes. And so, I do think those situations will change. Now, the Minnesota situation you listed was very interesting because they did not re-sign Sam Darnold and just watched him be the quarterback of a Super Bowl winning team. Does that affect their psyche? Because they had to have known J.J. McCarthy was a project. He was not going to roll out of bed and be the best rookie quarterback, be the top 5 guy, top 10 guy in the league. Does not mean he cannot become that in time. I personally have my doubts, and I did not like it at the time. But I feel like you've made your bed. Like you're trying to develop a guy that's going to win long term. Like I would be a little surprised if they wanted to go get a short-term quarterback. And for the sake of that example that you gave with that article is for Kyler Murray, that's not a scheme fit in my opinion. Like I think that what Kevin O'Connell has done with quarterbacks and rehabbing some careers is very commendable. And I think that it's a very different style from what Kyler Murray would need to run. So, that I think is a pretty easy one to say, no, I wouldn't do that if I'm Minnesota. Now, again, if McCarthy is bad again next year and the team goes 7-10, thinking, man, if we had quality quarterback play, would have been 12-5 and been in the playoffs. That's going to be a tough pill to swallow because they do have a really good roster and they should be able to be a playoff team. But I can't see them pulling the trigger on McCarthy yet. And the last thing I'll mention for now is I think it's very obvious, it started been reported too, that the Atlanta situation is going to be very interesting because Kirk Cousins, by reports, is going to get cut here before the deadline, which I think is in early or mid-March for his contract, something sooner rather than later. And what that's going to do is put Atlanta in a weird position because they still theorize that Penix is their long-term guy, but he may not be ready to start the year. He's already injury prone, and he was already older than any other rookie when he came into the league. And he's not an old quarterback. He's still in his mid to late 20s. But for a guy that's been in the league a couple of years, he's not 22 or 23. And with all these significant injuries he's had, and if they're going to get rid of Cousins, then they're going to need somebody to start the year because I don't think Atlanta's intention is to suck next year. I don't think anyone in the NFC South should just roll the ball out and be okay with 5-12 next season. I mean, the South's arguably the most winnable division in football right now. So anyone should feel like they can win it. And I think Atlanta should be targeting someone that can get the plane off the ground to start the season. So I don't know what the right move for them is. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of drama with Kevin Stefanski and Baker Mayfield. That's already been talked about. But they're going to have some answer at quarterback because the feeling, again, this is February 11th. It might change by the end of August, early September, but Penix might not be ready to start the year. And if that's the case, I doubt they're going to put a 5th or 6th round rookie out there to sling it around and hope for the best for a couple of weeks.
Well, the one quarterback situation that I'm looking at that I think is going to be interesting is Indianapolis with Daniel Jones. I mean, I thought he was red hot in the first half of the season. Colts were 7-2 before, things went downhill. Indianapolis went 7-2 and missed the playoffs. Like they were the Tampa Bay, they were the AFC version of the Bucs. I mean, they got out the gate, did some good things. And then next thing you know, you get an Achilles tendon tear. I mean, the man had 19 touchdowns, threw for 3,000 yards, and seems like Indy's pretty committed to him. But I don't know, as a free agent coming off that type of injury, what type of contract is that? Is it going to be the 4-year, $80 million or $44 million a year? But when you got an injured quarterback, I mean, then you start saying, do we really want to, invest that type of money? You still got a young Anthony Richardson and Riley Leonard, but it's just going to be interesting. But I could see them signing one of the free agent backups like Mariota or Flacco or somebody like that that's just holding on for dear life. I mean, but when you look at the list, it's going to be crazy. I mean, what is Pittsburgh going to do? I mean, you got a Aaron Rodgers there linking up with his former, and so it's just when those guys get old, I think it's time to go. I don't think Aaron Rodgers can really win another Super Bowl at that age. Obviously, he's not, on the level I think that Tom Brady was on, and Russell Wilson. I mean, he's about out of gas. Mariota. I mean, these guys were some hot names years ago, but I just think time has passed, and I think a lot of these guys may not get signed. You got guys like Tyrod Taylor still out there, I mean, and then you got a guy like Trey Lance. I mean, when is he going to come into his own? A Carson Wentz is still out there. So, I mean, all of these teams, I mean, he's at Minnesota too, but, y'all mentioned Bridgewater. I think that's over with, but all in all, I mean, you can find, I don't think anybody's looking for like a new potential starter guy like that. But I think they're trying to get a quality backup because I think on any level of football, you need 2 quarterbacks to win a championship. I just do. Now, most of the time, if your starter doesn't get hurt, that's fine. But, we saw it with Alabama. We've seen it with the Patriots. That's how Tom Brady got his career started. We see it all the time in college football. And, if you got a quality guy that can get in there, that can be just as productive as the backup, then I think you got something. And so there's a lot of quality names. It's just a matter of how much you want to pay those guys and what do they have left in the tank, because there's still a good crop of young quarterbacks that can push some of these older guys out. So, but for me, I was really thinking about Indianapolis, saying, "Wow, what could have been if Danny didn't get hurt?" Phillip Rivers, it just he was just Phillip Rivers. I mean,
right. So that now I wonder if do they kind of splurge on a backup quarterback, like a higher, maybe they go get Kirk Cousins as a backup or someone like that. That's a higher end guy, just in case that happens again, or Daniel Jones can't start the season. The thing I will say about Kyler, like Kevin O'Connell is such a good offensive mind that if he went to Minnesota, I think he would kind of figure it out. But the perfect scheme for him, unfortunately, is a guy that's no longer the head coach, but that's Miami when Mike McDaniel was there. That would have been the perfect scheme for what he likes to do. If I'm Kyler, I wouldn't mind going to Minnesota just because of the talent there, and I think Kevin O'Connell will figure it out. But I also wouldn't mind putting my ego aside and maybe going and be the backup for the Rams or something like that. Because I think if you could hold out for a year or two of Matthew Stafford and then take over Sean McVay type offense, I think then you're kind of rolling. But he's obviously been a Pro Bowler twice, so he probably wants to start. And there's just not a lot of starting jobs, especially because, like, look at a team like Vegas. They're going to probably draft Fernando Mendoza, and that's who they're likely going to start. I mean, there's not a ton of starting jobs that are out there like we've seen in years past. And so I'm interested to see what happens to that. And the same thing goes for Tua, where he ends up going. And Kyler, I will say Atlanta. We said Atlanta for Tua. I think Atlanta would also make sense for Kyler as well. Now, I would not want to try to tackle Kyler and Bijan Robinson in the same backfield if I was any kind of defense. But Tua is the same way. Like I think he's going to almost have to go be a backup somewhere and prove his worth there, and maybe eventually take a Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield type path to redemption at some point.
Well, because he's also got the distinction of not being durable too. I mean, I hate to say it, but he's one more head injury away from being done. Like he just is, and it's the most meaningful guy in the league right now when it comes to concussions. When we all think of that, Tua comes to mind. So I want to bring up one more quarterback. He's not a free agent, but I could see him getting traded. Mac Jones with San Francisco. Really quality year subbing in for Brock Purdy. 13 TDs to 6 picks, 70% as a passer, over 2,000 yards in his opportunities. I wonder if he's on the way or already fixed by Kyle Shanahan from that tumultuous time in New England. And again, I think Mac had some issues. It was not certainly all on what I'm about to say, but New England was one of the worst teams in terms of skill position personnel when he was there. I mean, they were at the very bottom. And so I wonder if a year of Shanahan, and he did sign a 2-year contract, so he is under contract for 2026, but I wonder if a team will call San Francisco with the right offer for him, because clearly San Fran is paying Brock Purdy way too much to move on from him and make it Mac Jones there. So I wonder if they'd shop Mac Jones and he would be a fit for, any of the teams we just talked about, because you don't have to marry yourself to Mac. He's under a very favorable contract. It was like a 2-year, $8.5 million contract. I would spend $4 million if I had a quarterback need to start the year just to check it out and see if it works, especially if I think my guy is going to come back at some point in the year. I think that's worth $4 million. So I do think there could be a trade market for him.
Yeah, and one of my final points is this, like, 2 things happened this year in football, one in college, one in the NFL, great stories. So you have the Indiana Hoosiers, pulling off what they pulled off. At this point, now every team in the country is thinking they can win a national title. I mean, like, I talked to one coach, I'm not going to say what, a college coach, he's recruiting my son, and he was like, yeah, we need players like you because we're trying to win a national title. And I was thinking, like, I don't see you winning nothing. But at the same time, it gave every team, every coach some hope, what Sig and those guys did. On the flip side, the reason a lot of people didn't like the Super Bowl is because of what I told you guys last week. You need a hero, a villain, a dynasty, or a rivalry, and it just wasn't there. But there was a story, that Sam Darnold story, I think, was the one thing that stuck out. So we're talking about quarterbacks. Sam Darnold gave everybody on the list hope. I mean, this man went from the Jets to the Panthers, 49ers, Vikings. I mean, what are they thinking right now? And then you got Seattle. Even though football is a team game, and Seattle's team was really built defensively. And then they had, and Jigba, he just went crazy. And then they were able to run the ball with Walker. So Sam Darnold was on a better team. And so that's what all of these guys that are looking for a home, yeah, they want their money, they want a chance to play, but they also want to get into it. They want the hand that Sam Darnold was dealt in Seattle as well. So, yeah. I mean, a lot of these guys watching Sam Darnold's story, they have hope in his redemption story. So it's going to be interesting to see. Same thing since Indiana did for a lot of mid-range college football teams is the same thing Sam Darnold is doing at the quarterback position for everybody on that list.
Yeah, it's going to give a lot of people false hope. That's for sure. All right, that's going to do it for the Bucs Squad Show. We'll be back Monday night at 9 Eastern Time. So please remember, this is just extra content we do. It doesn't take anything away from what James does. So follow him Monday through Friday. But then, yes, we'll be back Monday, 9 Eastern Time. Until then, fire the cannons.